Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to just give you some tips and tricks on how I prune my fruit trees. I've got three stone fruit that I'm pruning today, two plums and a peach. This is a blood plum. I've got a dwarf golf gold plum and also a dwarf peach. So this here is 8 weeks of new flush, new growth. I gave these a little bit of a haircut 2 months ago, and we've had an unusually hot, wet summer here in Australia. So everything in my whole fruit forest has just exploded with new growth. And being deciduous, they're going to lose a lot of their leaves over winter, and I don't want these tips of the branches to be quite so thin over winter because you can get some dieback on that. So I'm actually going to give them a little second summer prune here, just in preparation for winter. So the plant can push its energy into fruit production and also thickening up the trunks and the branches rather than just pushing out more new growth. Um, Also, being a very dense fruit forest, I have over 100 fruit trees. I need to keep things maintained to be compact and dense as possible without inhibiting fruit production. Just a quick side note, I'm doing another voiceover in this video. I know it's not the greatest, so I apologize for that. I did speak and record in person, but I live near a busy road and my neighbors were doing a little bit of renovation work, so the audio did not come out great. So please bear with me with that. I'm still figuring out a better method to record audio since I am new to YouTube and all this recording jargon. So yeah. Okay, so tip number one. Before you start cutting, you need to figure out exactly what shape that you require to build the best structure of your tree. Um, if you have a large backyard, you can grow your tree as big as you want. A lot of people tend to top their trees around 6 foot high. This because they don't want to climb ladders or actually climb the trees to pick. This is a perfectly acceptable way. So once the fruit's set, the branches will sag down and you'll get sort of an umbrella looking shape tree, which is one way of doing things. Um, because I have a small block and I only have 605 square meters, I have jammed over 100 fruit trees on my property. So I am trying to keep mine as dense and compact as possible, still with an aesthetically pleasing round oval type shape, right? So whilst you're cutting, make sure to stand back, have a look at your overall shape. That way you can actually have a better view of what shape that you're going for. So if you're standing on top of the plant or underneath it, um, you will lose sight of how big your overall shape is. So keep doing that, right? Take a few steps back, do a cut, come back in, cut some more. Tip number two. So you want to make sure your pruners are sharp and also clean. Sharp because you don't want any jagged, half broken branches. So when the cut is clean, it's obviously healthier. It prevents disease, pests, humidity, rain from entering, which can be detrimental to your trees. So always keep your blades sharp. You can sharpen them. I mean, you can look up some videos on how to do that. And to clean it, I use methylated spirits, or you can use bleach, rubbing alcohol, just something to disinfect the pruners. So if you do prune some infected, diseased timbers on other plants or trees, you won't carry that disease into your fruit trees or the next one that you're cutting, right? Okay, so tip number three. If your fruit trees are quite small, I'm talking like 1 foot and below, it may be beneficial to actually not prune at all. So I bought these about 2 years ago, and they were tiny. I'm talking 8 inches tall. So I had them in pots because I was still building my backyard out. And then I eventually put them in the ground, and they did nothing for a good 6 to 9 months. Um, they were not in the greatest shape, like there were some branches growing up to the side. But in those instances, it's better for you to not prune at all, because during the first growing year, you want the leaves, you want as much leaves on the plant as possible. The more leaves it has, the more opportunity it has for the sunlight to hit the leaves, right? So you want the sun to hit the leaves, it'll turn that into energy, the energy go into the roots develop a strong root system, a strong root structure, right? So keep that in mind. If your trees are really, really tiny, don't even bother pruning them, right? Your first year, you want the roots to establish something strong, and as soon as they do that, you will find the next growing season, they will explode, which is exactly what mine have done here. I mean, these have quadrupled in size in the last few months. Like, this is why I'm doing a second summer room, because they just keep putting on branches, right? And now I'm doing this because I want its energy to be directed into the branches and then into the buds, fruit spurs, not into new growth, new branches, new leaves. So once you get your structure set, then you can go to town on your pruning. But until your root systems is established, I would lay off the pruning, especially in your first year's growth. Tip number 4, do not be afraid to do summer pruning, or a second summer pruning as I'm doing here. Um, You definitely want to prune towards the beginning of summer, the middle of summer. Do not prune towards the end of summer. I'm doing a bit of an experiment on mine because the growth was very slow in the beginning of summer because these are young trees and then they've just exploded, right? So the two prunes, they've actually not fruited once. So I figure if I have another season that doesn't produce fruit, it's not really going to be too bad for me because I'm really liking the overall structure that I've got going here, right? So you can see I'm just bending the branches down. They all seem quite strong and sturdy. So if fruit is to set next season, these branches will easily carry the fruit. They won't be sagging all the way down, touching the ground, which is really bad. So you can see like on the peach, I'm just bending these branches. See how flimsy and floppy they are? Like this is not what you're after. So I'm cutting them back as well for the similar reason. Keep it compact. It's also going to be easier to net for birds and possums and fruit fly. So yeah, I know my peach tree will definitely be setting fruit. 2 years ago was the first fruit set, and I got four peaches off of it. Um, this year, sorry, I ended up having about 12 peaches. Um, I was still super busy in the building, renovating my house, so possums and birds did get half of those. So I actually only got like two or three peaches off this tree. Um, but now everything is established and I'm maintaining things a lot better. So I am expecting a ton of fruit from this peach tree next season. So yeah, fingers crossed. Tip number 5. So you want to cut out any dead or diseased branches. Sometimes you can see a branch where it slowly has a little bit of dieback, or you start to see the leaves sort of dying off in it. Better be safe than sorry. Just cut that branch right off. You can actually get disease that can spread and kill a 10-year-old fruit tree, right? So always be safe than sorry. If it looks a bit diseased, cut it off. You also want to get rid of any water shoots that are growing. So water shoots are Shoots that all they do is suck the energy out of the tree. They sort of start on the main trunks, sometimes right towards the bottom, and they will grow so fast. So if you're not keeping an eye on your fruit trees for a few weeks, you can come back and have this random branch that is growing straight up. So they actually don't produce much fruit, if any, so you always want to get rid of any of your water shoots. They're just, people call them suckers, and I mean that's self-explanatory. They just suck the energy out of the tree. So cut them off so the energy can go better into fruit production and into the branches where you want them to head to, right? Also, any low-laying branches, my rule of thumb is to keep branches about a foot off of the ground. um, Sometimes you'll have a low-lying branch and you think, oh yeah, that's fine. It's heading up in an upward direction. But once that sets fruit, you got to remember that all the branches do sag down, and you don't want any of the fruit or the branches and leaves to be touching the ground, right? Pests, bugs, disease, etc. And the last one is branches that are growing into each other. Once they grow into each other, they can actually start rubbing on each other. Once they rub, that can scar the branches and, sap leakage and then bugs and disease, etc. So you want to get rid of those as well. It's always good to keep an eye on your fruit trees. Like I said, stand back, have a look at where they're actually growing, see the whole picture, and you'll eventually pick up, you'll get an eye for it where it'll just become second nature to you. So you can just go and cut, 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 and you won't even have to think about it. On a lot of the techniques that I've done today is I'm leaving about 5 leaves on each branch that I'm cutting from where my previous cut was. So this technique is used where each of the leaves, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I do a cut. So leaving the 4 or 5 buds there, I'm going to leave 2 new shoots, which I will keep as branches, and hopefully the 3 or 4 buds that are on there will actually turn into fruit spurs, fruit buds, right? So you can only do this once you have your direct structure already sort of set up. So your main trunk split into 3 or 4 branches, and then those branches split out into 2 extra ones, if you get what I'm saying. So that's a step that you can only do once the structure is already in place. Okay, tip number 6. So you want to prune around dry periods, right? So a similar thing where I said with air circulation and sunlight, your pruning cuts will actually heal over, and they'll heal better in dry weather, preferably hot weather. But if you're in a cold climate, you still want to aim to do it around your dry period. So pay attention to the weather. If you've got a week of rain coming up, best not to prune that week, right? Also, with your cuts, you want to try and cut on an angular slope. So just imagine where the rain is coming to sit on the top. You never want to do a pruning cut flat or level with the ground, right? If you have a level cut, rain, humidity can actually sit and that can form rot and disease. So you want to cut at an angle. That way it has a better chance of drying out, which will make the cuts heal a lot faster and better. So this is the final tip, tip number 7. I actually pruned these 11 days ago, came back out and filmed this. So this is the 5 leaf pruning cut technique, right? So 2 points. The first point is wherever you leave your top leaf, that is the direction where your new shoots will grow in. So if you want your shoot to grow inward, like this one, you cut it and leave your top leaf facing inward. If you want your growth growing outward, you leave your top leaf facing outward. I hope that makes sense. The other reason you leave the 5 leaves is you can always count on new growth being pushed out of the top. So you can see here, if you count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I've got 2 new shoots at the top there. So the 3 leaves below, they have a higher chance now of turning into fruiting buds or flowers, which will turn into fruiting buds, right? So by doing this technique of leaving 5 leaves, I'm giving the plant more real estate to create the flowers, which will turn into your fruiting buds, right? So I've done about 10 cuts per tree minimum, actually. So 10 times 3, that's 30 potential fruiting buds that I am pushing the plant to produce by doing this 5 leaf cut. So just keep that in mind next time if you want to cut a little lower or a little longer. Um, you want it to be around 5 leaves, not too much longer. That way, all the energy from the plant can really push out flower buds for next season for fruit set. So yeah, that's about it, guys. Thanks. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I really appreciate the likes and comments and views. Cheers, guys. Bye.